Before anyone even knew his name, the theater went quiet in a way that felt different, like the air itself was holding its breath.
A small boy stood alone at the center of the America's Got Talent stage, feet barely reaching the edges of the spotlight, hands trembling just enough to show he was human. The audience smiled politely, some whispering, some unsure. A 9-year-old, dressed simply, facing judges who had seen it all. And then, in the space of a single heartbeat, everything changed. He introduced himself softly, his voice almost lost in the size of the room. When asked why he was there, he said he loved music and that Michael Jackson made him feel brave.
A few people nodded.
The judges exchanged looks that said they'd heard this before. The crowd expected something cute, maybe sweet, maybe forgettable.
But what they got was something no one could prepare for.
As the music began, he closed his eyes, not to hide, but to focus, and when he sang his first note, it felt like time cracked open. The sound that came from him didn't match his age, his size, or anyone's expectations. It carried emotion far beyond 9 years of life, rich and controlled, with a tone that echoed the soul of classic pop and the pain of someone who had lived much more than he should have.
The audience gasped.
A judge leaned forward. Another stopped smiling entirely, stunned.
This wasn't imitation. This wasn't a trick.
This was something real, something raw, something that reached straight into the chest and squeezed.
But this moment didn't start on that stage.
It started years earlier in a small home where music was a refuge.
His family didn't have much.
Some nights the lights flickered. Some mornings breakfast was just hope and water. School was hard, kids laughed at him for singing old songs, for dancing alone during recess, for being different. Teachers told him to focus on real things.
Friends drifted away.
But at night, when the world went quiet, he played his favorite tracks softly and sang along, imagining a place where his voice mattered. His mother noticed first. She heard the way he sang when he thought no one was listening, how he poured everything into each note. She saw how music changed him, from shy and anxious to confident and alive. She believed in him even when others said it was unrealistic, even when money was tight and dreams felt expensive. She drove him to small auditions, talent shows, community centers.
Sometimes he was rejected without a second glance.
Sometimes he didn't make it past the first round. Each no hurt, but each one also made him hold his dream tighter. By the time he stepped onto the AGT stage, he carried all of that with him, the doubts, the late nights, the whispered prayers, the belief of one parent who never gave up. And that's why his voice sounded the way it did.
It wasn't just talent. It was survival. It was love.
It was the sound of a child who refused to be silenced.
As he continued singing, the camera caught tears forming in the crowd.
A woman clutched her chest.
A man wiped his eyes quickly, hoping no one noticed. The judges weren't judging anymore. They were listening.
One of them shook their heads slowly, smiling in disbelief.
Another covered their mouth, overwhelmed.
When the final note rang out, there was a pause, just a second of stunned silence, before the entire theater erupted. The applause was thunderous, people leaping to their feet, cheering not just for a performance but for a moment they knew they'd remember forever. The boy opened his eyes, startled, as if he hadn't expected anyone to hear him at all. His hands shook again, this time not from fear, but from the sudden realization that his dream had just taken its first real breath. The judges spoke, one by one, their words full of awe. They talked about how rare it was to hear such control, such emotion, especially from someone so young. They said he didn't just sing a song, he told a story. They told him he reminded them why they fell in love with music in the first place. And when one judge stood up and pressed the golden buzzer, raining gold around him like a promise from the sky, the boy fell to his knees, crying, overwhelmed by joy he didn't yet have words for. Backstage, his mother ran to him, holding him tightly, both of them shaking, laughing, crying all at once. Years of struggle collapsed into that single hug.
All the times they almost quit.
All the nights they wondered if it was worth it.
In that moment, it was more than worth it. But the story doesn't end with confetti.
The real message lives beyond the stage. This is a story about believing when it's hard, about holding on to your voice when the world tells you to be quiet.
It's about parents who support dreams even when they don't understand how they'll survive.
It's about kids who feel different and are told to fit in, when what they really need is to stand out. If this story moved you, if you felt that chill when his voice filled the room, take a second to show your support. Like this video so more people can feel this moment, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss stories that remind us what hope sounds like. Every click helps these voices travel further, especially to someone out there who needs to believe in themselves today. Because somewhere right now, another child is singing quietly in a bedroom, afraid no one will listen. And stories like this tell them that one day, the world just might. Before the lights rose and before the cameras found him, the room already felt different, as if something unseen was about to happen. The audience settled into their seats, chatting softly, scrolling phones, waiting for the next act, unaware that in just a few moments they would witness a moment that would stay with them long after the show ended. From backstage, a small figure peeked through the curtain, eyes wide, heart racing. He was only 9 years old, and yet the weight of a dream far bigger than his body rested on his shoulders. This was not just a performance. This was a chance to be heard. When he stepped onto the America's Got Talent stage, the spotlight seemed too bright, the stage too wide. He looked tiny standing there, his shoes polished, his outfit neat but simple. The judges smiled kindly, the way adults often do when they see a child about to perform, encouraging, but cautious.
The audience responded with polite applause.
Some leaned back in their seats, expecting something cute, maybe impressive for his age, but nothing life-changing.
No one could have imagined what was about to happen. He introduced himself in a soft voice, almost shy.
When asked about his inspiration, he spoke about Michael Jackson, about how his music made him feel strong and understood. A few murmurs rippled through the crowd.
Many children loved Michael Jackson songs. That wasn't unusual.
What no one realized was how deeply this music had become part of his soul, how it had carried him through moments when the world felt too loud and too unkind. The music started gently. He closed his eyes, took a breath, and then sang. The first note sliced through the room like electricity. It wasn't just powerful, it was emotional, controlled, and hauntingly familiar. Gasps echoed across the theater. People sat up straight. Judges leaned forward, eyes widening. This was not the voice of a 9-year-old trying to copy a legend. This was the voice of a child who had lived inside the music, who understood it, who felt it. As he continued, the room transformed. Conversations stopped. Phones lowered. Hearts opened. Every note carried something heavy and honest: longing, hope, pain, and joy all woven together. His voice rose and fell with confidence that seemed impossible for someone his age. It wasn't perfect because it didn't need to be. It was real. Yet this moment had been years in the making. Long before this stage, long before bright lights and cheering crowds, there was a small home where dreams often felt fragile. His family lived simply. Money was always tight. Some days his parents worried about bills more than anything else. But in that home, music lived freely. Old songs played on a worn-out speaker, and the boy would sing along, memorizing every note, every breath. At school, things were not always easy. Other children didn't understand him. They teased him for liking old music, for dancing instead of playing games, for being different. Sometimes he came home quiet, holding his feelings inside. Sometimes he cried, asking why he couldn't just be normal. His mother would listen, holding him close, telling him that being different was not a weakness, it was a gift. Late at night, when the house was quiet and the world felt far away, he practiced. He sang softly at first, then louder as confidence grew. He studied videos, learned how to control his breath, how to feel the music instead of forcing it. Music became his safe place, the one space where fear couldn't reach him. There were setbacks. Auditions where he was told he was too young. Performances where people smiled but didn't clap very hard. Moments when doubt crept in and whispered that maybe this dream was too big. Each time, he thought about quitting. Each time, his family reminded him why he started. By the time he stood on the AGT stage, he carried all of that with him. Every rejection. Every lonely lunch break. Every late-night practice session. That was why his voice sounded the way it did. It was not just talent. It was resilience. Back on stage, the song built toward its climax. His voice soared, filling every corner of the theater. Tears streamed down faces in the audience. Some people covered their mouths in disbelief. Others reached for the hands of strangers beside them. The judges were no longer judging. They were feeling. When he finished, the final note hung in the air like a question waiting for an answer. For one brief second, there was silence. Then the entire room exploded. A standing ovation rose like a wave, thunderous and unstoppable. People screamed, clapped, cried. The boy opened his eyes, stunned. He hadn't expected this. He had only hoped to sing his heart out. The judges spoke with voices full of emotion. They told him he had something rare, something you can't teach. They praised his courage, his control, his soul. One judge admitted they had forgotten his age entirely. Another said this performance reminded them why music matters. And then came the moment that changed everything. The golden buzzer was pressed. Gold rained from above as the boy dropped to his knees, overwhelmed. Tears streamed down his face as the crowd roared louder than ever. In that moment, every struggle felt worth it. Backstage, his family watched, crying openly, hugging each other, knowing their lives had just shifted forever. But the true power of this story goes beyond the stage and the confetti. This is a story about believing in yourself when no one else does. About parents who choose faith over fear. About a child who dared to hold onto his voice in a world that often tries to quiet the unusual and the different. It's about how dreams don't ask your age, they ask your heart. After the show, messages poured in from around the world. Parents wrote about their children finding courage. Kids wrote about feeling seen for the first time. Adults wrote about remembering dreams they had once buried. One performance sparked thousands of others to believe again. If this story touched you, if it made you feel something deep inside, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video so more people can discover this moment. Subscribe to the channel for more stories that inspire hope, courage, and belief. Your support helps voices like his reach the world. Because somewhere, right now, another child is singing quietly, wondering if their dream matters. And stories like this remind us all that sometimes, the smallest voice can make the biggest impact.